We're here right now at Dragonfly Comics in White House, Tennessee. And let's talk to Patrick and Kevin. Welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you. Happy to be here.
Hey, thanks.
Okay, we'll start with you, Patrick, since you're standing in front of me. Give us a background. We chit-chatting a little bit, me, you, and Kavora, all of us, or how we grew up around comics and geek culture. Where did you grow up, and how did you get into comics?
So I was born in California. We moved to Alabama when I was 3. My dad's family was from Alabama. And my brother, who is older than me, he's 16 years older than me, he was a big comic book fan. And so randomly he had given me a couple of issues of his Batman comic. So I ended up reading Batman at an age where I was too young to read Batman, but it made me love comics. It made me love reading. And we lived in the country. So for me, I was reading about Gotham City, which was something I wasn't used to. I didn't know the city. I didn't know the city life. So it was a nice exposure to something that was very foreign to me. So that's kind of where I got my first initial exposure to comics.
Do you remember the issue?
No, but I remember Catwoman was in it.
Okay.
There's one thing that sticks out, and it's Catwoman from that issue. So
Was it the Neil Adams era?
yes. Yeah, it was that.
Iconic. Oh, yeah. Amazing way to start out.
Yeah, it was. The books were just incredible. The writing was amazing. The art was amazing. It was astounding. So, yeah. And I randomly read issues of Batman here and there because we just didn't pick them up regularly. I didn't subscribe to them. And then as I became a teenager, I ended up leaning more towards Marvel and reading the X-Men comics. And so for me, the X-Men struck a chord with me as kind of fringe society, as people that were outcast to some degree. And it just resonated with me. And so that
100% agree with you there.
Yeah. Yeah.
What an era that was, the early to mid 80s X-Men.
Oh yeah, it was incredible. It was incredible. And then going into the 90s and getting a cartoon version of the X-Men was even better because it was the right age for me to love that cartoon. And I introduced my niece and nephew to the comics, and we would go outside and play out in the yard, and we were playing X-Men and Batman and whatever it was. And so we that was our life. You know, we lived comic book characters as our enjoyment, as our fun. So I stopped reading for a long time. During high school, we didn't have a local comic book shop that was really accessible to me, so there was really nowhere I could go and easily get books.
And where were you in high school?
I went to school in Falkville, Alabama,
Okay.
tiny little town. And when I first started high school, we had a comic book shop, and it closed. And I was devastated when that shop closed because I loved going in there and just wandering through and looking at books and looking at the art and you know, reading bits and pieces here and there. So it was very, very sad when it closed, but it kind of sparked a dream in me to one day open a shop of my own. And so that's kind of where that dream started was back then when there was suddenly no shop for me to go to. I wanted to be the shop that people could go to. So
Awesome. How about you, Kevin? How did you get your start in comics? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Tennessee, so I'm Tennessee born and raised. And
part?
Columbia, Tennessee.
Right.
Moved up to White House about 16 years ago with a previous job. And then that job ended and just kind of stuck around. Still work in corporate culture. I work actually for a bank as well still. But the funny thing is, I really haven't been in comic book culture till now. The first movie I ever saw was Star Wars. My parents took me to see it when I was 2. And I cried throughout the entire thing. So after that, my parents said, well, we'll never take you to see another movie ever again because you couldn't hack that. So I've just always been a Star Wars fan. So that's kind of been my thing most of my life, is just really loving Star Wars. But I'm also a huge fan of just popular culture in general. I didn't read my first comic book until I started watching The Walking Dead. So started reading The Walking Dead comic and really loved it, but didn't really pick up any other comics. When Patrick decided he was going to open the comic book store, we talked about, I've been a fan of Funko Pops for several years now and have a huge personal collection. Actually, we both do. So we talked about things that we would do in a comic book store. So he made me the official procurement specialist of Collectibles. So we have the Pops and everything, and most of that is just from my love of popular culture. So now with the store, I find myself walking down the aisle of comic books and I see stuff and I pick it up and I read the first page and I think, oh, wow, I really want to read this. So, and there are a lot of things still in popular culture with all the movies. The new Watchmen series on HBO got me really involved with wanting to go back and read Watchmen to get engrossed in that culture. So, it's just I'm kind of the oddball of being in comic book culture because it's not my background. It's not something that I really grew up with.
But what a great time to get in because now it's so mainstream and acceptable.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. And that's we've been talking with customers and talking to other folks of the comic book readers of today do not necessarily look like the comic book readers of the past. We were talking about people who are game players and Dungeons and Dragons and things like that, and that's something that we've had customers come in and ask us about Dungeons and Dragons stuff, which originally we had not really planned to carry gaming stuff. We were going to stick with collectibles and comic books, but we found out that Dungeons and Dragons is such a huge thing again.
Yeah.
So, we're looking into getting some of that stuff in to help take care of that segment of the population. But in talking to those customers, and not to be judgmental, but you look at them and think, you're not the person that I thought would be a Dungeons and Dragons player. And they admit that as well. I don't look like what you would think the typical Dungeons and Dragons player would be. So it's been very interesting, and it's fun to find out what people are obsessed with and what people love and how deeply connected people are to certain things. So that's been the fun part of this.
What was your character that you created?
What was it, 6 feet tall, and I think I said red eyes.
So that's the awesome thing. You can be what you aren't in life. Yeah, you can take on a completely different persona. So, yeah, that's the cool thing. So it's really funny. We've one of my really good friends' husbands, when we started having people come in and ask about gaming stuff, I sent him a text message, and they were actually in Orlando on vacation. And I said, "Don't you game?" And he's like, "Yep." And I was like, "We need help. We need you to come back. When y'all get back, we need to have a discussion about how all this works." So, one of the big things that we're really trying to do is also look outside our box and figure out what people want, what people are into, and try to accommodate that as best we can.
Well, we see a lot of variety here, and since you handle a lot of the collectible aspects, why don't you give our listeners a virtual tour of what they could expect to see at Dragonfly Comics and Collectibles?
So, when you walk into the building, generally immediately to your right along the comic book wall, we have about 5 aisles that are nothing but Funko Pops. And there are exclusives, there are limited editions, there's commons. It kind of runs the gamut. I've been collecting those things for about a year to put in the shop. And we're constantly getting them in directly from Funko. We're buy collections from people that are no longer collecting or just need to thin out their herd. So as you go through, we also have on top of the comic book wall, there are boxes and boxes of statues from Batman to Catwoman to Joker to Squirrel Girl. We also have a lot of those displayed in the back in a glass case.
Even Linda Carter, Wonder Woman. I mean, you got some vintage type things, retro, but they're still modern.
Yes, we are super excited about that Linda Carter Wonder Woman. She was hard to track down, but we finally got our hands on some because as soon as all those were made available, they sold out. We even have an 18-inch Batman pop. So as you kind of go around the room, we still have a lot of. We just started carrying fig pens, which apparently is a big deal nowadays that have serial numbers or highly collectible. But we also have a lot of Grail pops as far as just really, really hard to find things. We have our wall of protection up front, so we have protectors for not only comics but for pops. And we're constantly looking at other things that we can bring in. To be interesting. We actually just brought in something that's called a Minico. And those are, we have a Batman, a Pennywise, we have Harry Potter coming, we have an Aquaman. So those are actually a little bit larger than a Funko Pop, but they are actually a statue, but they are vinyl statues that we're really excited about. But we deal directly with Diamond. We deal with Sideshow, Entertainment Earth. So we're always looking for other distributors to bring in new stuff.
That's awesome. Yeah, really nice. Patrick, tell us about the comic book side.
Well, we carry new releases, and we carry most of the standard new releases that you would imagine, DC, Marvel, all the main lines. But we also carry a pretty good selection of indie comics. I found as I got a little bit older that I enjoyed the stories in indie comics so much more than your traditional superhero. There's a lot of mystery. There's a lot of strangeness, and that appeals to me. I was a big Twin Peaks fan, so indie comics offer a similar strain of storytelling when it comes to their line. So we do have a good selection of indies. I also carry archive comics. Typically, most of those are 80s, 90s, and 2000s. And then we also do look to purchase comic book collections as well. So that's something that we're interested in talking to anybody about if there's collectors out there that have some they might want to sell. So,
any highlights from your personal collection?
Well, my personal collection is all still at home. So, but I have a couple of signed issues from a couple of different people, and then I have randomly I had sold off my Generation X. We were at a con not too long ago, and a guy had the first 20 issues of Generation X, and I bought them again because I just loved reading that book. Mm-hmm. So that's one of those that I think I'll probably keep from now on. Now is those issues of Generation X, because again, just like with X-Men, there was something about it that resonated with me. So
that's great. This is a brand new comic store, and we're glad to be able to be part of this and seeing it from the early stages. But you're very well stocked for being such a new store. Any interesting stories that you had in the process of getting this location?
Well, getting the location itself, we looked at several other locations that just didn't pan out, and then this one sort of fell in our lap, which was a blessing in disguise.
It's right off the highway, off 65. It's easy to get to.
Yeah, we're not far from anything. We're on the main drag in town, right here on 76. So that part of it is really good. When it comes to the actual comic book stock, that was a learning experience for me. As a reader, I didn't know how the ordering process went, so there was a little bit of a challenge in figuring out what do I want to stock here in White House. Mm-hmm. So I picked up a wide variety of stuff to start with. Mm-hmm. And there's some stuff that hasn't sold. There's some stuff that I think, okay, am I going to stock this? And then I'll read the first issue and think, yeah, I'm going to stock this, and I'm going to tell people about it because people should read this. So,
and that's huge in our eyes, is having a comic shop owner that actually enjoys the product and we could have a conversation with.
Yeah.
And us talking to you just right off the bat, we knew that this is your passion.
Yeah, I love comic books and I love to read, so it's the perfect combination.
So our listeners can check out your website. Where are you located?
We are dragonflycomics.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter as well. So you'll find the links for all those on the website.
Awesome.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our Facebook group. Live long and may the force be with you. Nanu Nanu.